Hey guys, it's yarn day! Here.
Wow.
Here.
Look at that one. Look at this one. Look at that one.
Hey, slow down. The parking lot. Okay, have a hand. It's heavy. You need help? Okay, I'll hold the blanket. Okay. Yay! This is the most exciting part. We're going to talk all about yarn today. I hope you really enjoyed our intro. That is live footage from a recent yarn adventure that I took my 2-year-old son on. We went to the yarn store. It's like the best thing ever. So much fun. But there's tons to know and there's a lot to learn. So we're going to talk about that today. Reading yarn labels and how to pick out what yarn is going to work best for your project is really what we're going to focus on. Don't forget to subscribe because we only have one more video before our project launches on Friday, which is November 1st. I'm so excited for this, you guys. You're gonna love it and you're gonna knit soon. It's so exciting. So make sure you hit subscribe. Let me know in the comments below if you've already gotten your yarn or where you're at with everything. If you have any questions, please let me know so I can make sure that I answer those before we launch on Friday for our first big project. Okay, so you have your weapon at the ready. I hope you've been able to choose the perfect knitting needles to get you started. And now it's time to wrangle your yarn. So I know this whole time I've been saying that the needle is the most important part, and that's very true, but the yarn is the most fun. So we're gonna talk about that today. So choosing your yarn is so hard. I spend hours in the yarn store, don't tell my husband, and trust me, it's like the hardest thing you'll ever have to do. So that's the hardest part, but we're gonna make it a little bit easier by everything we're gonna talk about today. The yarn section at your local craft store is the happiest place on earth. Hands down, no questions asked, happiest place on earth. Did you see my kid's face? He was having fun. But if you don't know what you're looking for, it can be 50 shades of confusing up in there because there's like 100 different yarns and there's all these different colors and they're thick and they're thin and they're over here and over there and they all look different and blah. Don't freak out. We're gonna figure it out. I promise. We're gonna do it. So yarn comes in all different shapes and sizes, just like knitting needles do. So we really need to know what's gonna be the best yarn for the project that we're doing. You're in the yarn section. You got some drool probably like right up in here and you're just trying to figure out where to start. Well, one of the biggest things is if you have a pattern, then you know where to start because your pattern is going to tell you what weight yarn you need, and that's going to really set the tone for figuring out where you need to go in the yarn store to get the yarn that you need for your project to make it work. If you don't have a project in mind, then you can go wherever you want, sister. You pick whatever yarn makes you happy. Touch it, squish it, and then a little trick that I have, at least at my Hobby Lobby where I am from, and which you probably saw in the video as well, they have these little knit samples, so you can touch it, you can feel the fabric, you can pull it, you can stretch it, and you can really get an idea of how it's going to knit up so that you can use that to make a decision. And when I show you the ball bands, those little samples that they have out, use all the recommended needle sizes from the ball band to give the desired fabric that the yarn recommends. So it's going to give you a great jumping off point when you start your project because you already know what needles to use and the yarn that you picked is going to be the perfect fit for the fabric that you want. The first big thing that you're going to want to look for on a ball band is the fiber content. I buy personally, please don't burn me at the stake, guys. I buy a lot of acrylic yarn. I knit a lot of baby hats, I knit a little baby blankets, I knit a lot of things that need to be washed all the time. And acrylic is really the best way to do that. Just trust me. There are a lot of great natural animal fibers. Cotton is great for like dishcloths and face cloths and things like that. And animal fibers are fantastic too. You can buy superwash wool that allows you to wash it and care for it. But if you are like a low maintenance kind of gal or gentleman, sorry, in the back, I go with acrylic for most of my projects. It's easy to maintain, it's easy to clean. Usually if you find the right brand, trust me, you can find really, really super soft acrylics. I buy a lot of mine at Hobby Lobby. Baby Bee is like, this is my jam. This is like my favorite yarn. It's so, so soft. Comes in great colors and it's affordable. I also love Knit Picks. Their Brava Sport is a big winner in my book, and I'll show you a close-up of that as well. I'll also put a link to the yarns that I recommend in this video in the links below so you can find them. Another one, if you love color, the Mandala Cakes. Hello, cutest thing ever. And it's already striped, so you don't have to change colors or learn any of that crazy stuff. You just knit and it changes colors all by itself. It's also going to talk about the recommended needle size, which I talked about a little bit with those little samples that they have in the store. So you want to make sure you have the needle size that either your pattern calls for or that your yarn recommends. So make sure that you grab the needles while you're strolling through this section. The other thing you want to look for on a ball band is how much yarn comes in it. If you buy one of these that has 590 yards in it and you need 3,000 yards to make some crazy blanket pattern, you're gonna need more than one. So you wanna make sure that you get enough yarn to cover whatever project you're working on. So it's really important to be able to denote how much yarn comes in what we call a put up or whatever it may be. This one is a cake, this one is a skein, this one's a braid, but it's kind of like a hank, depending on what you want to call it. But you want to make sure that you get enough yarn to cover whatever project you get, because you don't want to get halfway through your project and run out of yarn. That'd be terrible. You'd have to go back to the yarn store. Oh, the worst. Last thing that's going to be on the ball band is the color. If you're going to try and get the same yarn again, you need to know what color it is. That's kind of how it works. You got to know what color it is. It's also certain yarns have what we call a dye lot. Depending on what kind of yarn it is, sometimes the like really marbly, like variegated yarns don't have a dye lot because they're dyed in such a way that if there's variations in the color, you won't really see it, if that makes any sense. But if you go to the store and buy Toy Elephant, which is this one, and then you go back 2 weeks later and you buy Toy Elephant again, it's likely that there may be a slight variation in the color. So when you're buying yarn, you always want to make sure you buy enough for whatever project you're working on. If you can, try. Because it may look exactly the same, but there may be just a tiny, tiny difference, and you'll really see it when you knit it up. So always make sure to get at least as much yarn as you need. I recommend getting at least one skein extra. You can always make another project with it. I mean, it doesn't go bad. You don't have to store it in your refrigerator. If you're anything like me, you just have a closet that you hide it all from your husband, okay? So get an extra one. You'll thank me later. So typically this is something you would do at the yarn store. Unfortunately at the yarn store, I had my toddler and they were having a big yarn sale. So the yarn store was really busy. So I didn't want to do this there. So I brought yarn home so we can do it here. So the first thing you'll see, obviously the brand is going to be front and center. Sometimes you can see some information on there. A lot of brands will include a pattern on the inside of the ball band or a link to access a free pattern. So that's always something to look for. So the first thing you'll notice on the ball band for this one is it's going to tell you how much weight, so how many ounces the yarn is, as well as grams, depending on where you live. I'm in the US, so we usually go by the grams. And then it's going to tell you the yardage and the meterage, so how much yarn is going to be in this whole put up. It also does say machine washable and dryable. I buy a lot of really soft acrylic because I do a lot of baby knitting, and acrylic is usually the easiest one to maintain, especially with allergies and things like that for wool. You'll also see that it tells us what the makeup is. So this one, again, is 100% acrylic. And then the things that are a little harder to maybe interpret right away are all of these symbols. These are pretty universal as far as what every yarn label is going to show. So this first one here is going to tell us the weight of the yarn. So this is a lightweight yarn, or a weight 3. And then the second one, you'll see the little knitting needles there. This tells us what the gauge is. So if we were to knit a 4x4 square, we would want to use size 5 US needles, or 3.75 millimeters. And it would take about 22 stitches and 30 rows. And that's important because if you're substituting a yarn, or if you're just trying to make something maybe more freehand, this is going to tell you what kind of fabric this yarn is set up to produce with this recommended needle size. It also has a recommended recommended hook size for crochet. These symbols down the side here are talking about the laundry care. This first one on the top is going to talk about the machine washing settings. The triangle is about bleaching. The square is about drying. This one, pretty self-explanatory. Don't iron it. If you iron acrylic, it will melt. No bueno. And then the last one is going to talk about dry cleaning. And I don't have all of these symbols memorized. I do know a little bit about them, but I'm going to leave a link in the comments that's going to go over all of the care instructions. And those are really important to note if you're making something like a sweater or a baby blanket. Obviously, if you are wearing a sweater all the time that you've made, you're going to want something that's machine washable. You're most likely not going to want to have to lay out your sweater every time you want to wash it. Same with baby items, you're going to want them to be machine washable. The last thing that you'll see on the ball band that's something to pay attention to is the color. And then you'll also see this lot number, sometimes called a dye lot. Some yarns don't have this. Depending on how they're dyed, it may not matter. But if you're buying multiple skeins or hanks or cakes of yarn, you're going to want to try and get the same lot number, because that's the batch of yarn dye that they used. It's really hard to see the differences in the store, but trust me, when you knit them up, you'll see the difference if they're not the same lot number, or lot number. So make sure that you get the same lot number. If you're thinking you might be making a project with multiple skeins where you're going to need them, just try and grab the same lot number if you can. If you buy yarn online, they're usually pretty good about making sure that they're from the same lot. So that's this one, and this one's a mandala baby cake. I really like these ones. They have some really great colors. Usually you can get these, you can get them at Walmart usually, and sometimes Michael's. I buy most of my yarn at Hobby Lobby though, because it's my favorite, if you couldn't tell from the introduction there. So that's reading this yarn label. And like I said, most of them are pretty similar. There's a few differences. So this one is Knit Picks, which is online. Their Brava Sport yarn is fantastic. It's a really great yarn to work with. This one's a little different because it is a vertical skein. So when you're trying to find the end of the yarn, it's going to come from the top. There it is. So one kind of, I guess, trick that I have, boom, found it, is when I'm in the yarn store, I will actually pick up a few different skeins and see if I can find the yarn end before I buy them, because finding the yarn end is like a needle in a haystack, and you don't want to have what they call yarn barf, which is like what this is. I mean, there's like none there, but sometimes like half the skein will just like pop out when you're trying to find the end. So that's a great tip to have. If it's a vertical skein, it's always going to be on the top for the center pole. If it's a horizontal skein, it's always going to be on the left, and I'll show you that when we get to that one. So this one is a Knit Picks. It's a Brava Sport. I'll put a link for their website in the description below. It comes in a ton of colors. It's a really great value. Like I said, the yarn is fantastic to work with. I did a lot of like mittens and things like that with this yarn. I find it really, really lovely to work with. And again, a great value. So on the back here, we're going to see a lot of the same things we saw in the other one, slight differences in how they kind of lay it out, but you can see what it's made of. So this one again is 100% acrylic. I use a lot of acrylics. Again, I knit a lot for babies and things like that. So the care for acrylic just fits with what I'm making the most. And then it tells me how many yards and how many grams. This is a sport weight yarn, and we can see the little yarn with a number 2. So this one is a number 2, where the mandala was a number 3. So this is a thinner yarn than this one, because this one's a 2 yarn and this one's a 3, which you wouldn't really be able to tell if you looked at the yarns just next to each other. Okay, and then for the gauge, this tells us that we should get about 6 stitches per 1 inch using size 3 to 5 needles. So this one's a little more broad. It doesn't give us as much information, but it gives us somewhere to start off on so that we know what kind of fabric we're looking at. This one's a machine wash, tumble dry low, and that's what these symbols here mean. So nothing different there. Again, the 2 tells us the weight of the yarn. And then on the side, we have the color and the lot number. So most of those same things are covered on this one as well. And with a vertical skein like this one, the yarn for the center pole is always going to be coming out of the top. So this one's a horizontal skein. So the center pole would come from the left over here. This one I actually haven't pulled out yet. What you see down here is the outside pole, which could be a little harder to work with. So the center pole is always usually easier. So this is a baby bee. This is from Hobby Lobby. This is another really great yarn. Again, I do buy a lot of acrylics, so I'm really sorry for all of you animal fiber fans out there. Acrylics just work better for what I knit the most. Okay, and again, this one has a free pattern on the label. A lot of them will have that, so when you take the label off the yarn, it'll be on the inside. And the first thing we come to is the color information, and then there's our lot number. So if I needed to buy multiple skeins of this yarn, I would look for this lot number. And usually if you're buying it at the same store at the same time, it shouldn't be hard to find that matching lot number. And as we turn it, so here we have our ounces and grams, as well as our yards and meters. This one's 60% acrylic, 40%, whatever that is. And we're looking for the knitting needle gauge. So this tells us for a 4x4 square, we would need 23 stitches, 29 rows, and we want to use a size 4mm needle, which is a US size 6, which they have down here as well. And this is another lightweight yarn. You can see the 3 in there. Get a little closer so you can see. It has the washing instructions, drying instructions, don't iron. This triangle is for bleaching, and then this last one is for dry cleaning. Okay, one that I have here. So this one's a braid. I'm like obsessed with these. These are, this one is a, it's Karen Pantone, and they come in these braids, and they have like these 5 little tiny balls of yarn that all together and make up these beautiful little color palettes. They come with this like color card. These are really cute. I'm pretty sure I got this one at Michael's, which I don't shop a ton at Michael's here because again, I really love Hobby Lobby, but you can get them there as well. And this one's a little bit different because everything's on this card here. So this one is a bulky size 5. So this one is significantly thicker than the other ones that I've showed you. And you can also see that based on the gauge. This one, they're recommending a US size 10 needle, whereas the other ones, they were recommending a size 5. And you're only going to get 15 stitches and 20 rows for a 4-inch swatch. 4-inch swatch. That was a tongue twister. So it's significantly larger stitches. It's definitely a thicker yarn. Again, it has the crochet gauge as well. And then all the care instructions over here. Again, this one is for the washing machine, dryer, iron, bleach, and then dry cleaning. And again, I'll leave a link to all of the laundry care symbols in the description box below so that you guys can have that as a reference. This one is machine washable and dryable. It's a big thing in a lot of the yarns that I buy. It is 60% acrylic, 20% nylon, and then 20% merino wool, which you'll see merino is a pretty desired yarn material. There we go. And then this one is 3.5 ounces or 100 grams, but only 127 yards. So this one here was also 100 grams, but see it has 273 yards in this blue one on the left, but the one on the right only has 127. So same amount of yarn, or same weight of yarn, but significantly different amounts of yarn based on the thickness of it. All right, guys, I know I threw a ton of information at you, but it's time to go to the yarn store. If you haven't gone already, it's time to go. Give yourself like 4 hours on a Saturday afternoon. Well, not Saturday, because we're knitting on Friday. So don't wait till Friday. You're gonna have to go before then. Go get your yarn, pick out something fantastic for the pattern that we're gonna be working on first, which is, again, getting launched on Friday. You're gonna need a worsted weight yarn, size 4, and you're gonna need about 150 yards. So just make sure you buy enough of that. Make sure it's a size 4 yarn or a worsted weight, and you should be good to go. I can't wait to see what yarn you guys pick, and I will see you super soon for our last video before we do our big pattern launch. The next video, we're gonna talk about all of the different tools that I use. So you've got your needles, you're gonna go get your yarn, and then there's just a couple little other things that we might need. So we're gonna talk about some of those helpful tools that might come in handy while you're knitting. And I will see you guys super soon. Don't forget to subscribe so you don't miss the big pattern launch. Yeah, you've come this far. You're so close. You're almost knitting. Make sure you subscribe. I know what I'm looking for. I'm a pro, so I don't have to do that. Read it in the store. I can just throw it in the cart and buy it.